Shalom. This week's Torah portion is called Kedoshim. And in it, we read about how Bnei Israel, the Jewish people, the Israelites, are to be holy and separate themselves from a behavior of pagan worshipping and other things that are impure. Idolatry, theft, paying off bribes and judges, and all of those things. So, every week the Haftara has a thematic connection. There's a thread that connects the Parsha to the Haftara. Interestingly, this week we have two Haftorahs, one for the Sephardim and one from the Ashkenazim. I will deal with the Sephardim first. So, the Haftara comes from the book of Yechezkel, and this man was a prophet who was part of the men who saw the destruction of the temple, first temple, and was part of the exile. And he was actually the major prophet that was having prophecies about the future as to what's going to happen to Bnei Israel, to the Israelites. In his name, Chazak El, Yechezkel, that God is strong. And his wife passed away before he went into exile. And he was one of the only prophets that had the visions outside of the land of Israel. And what he's explaining here in the Haftarah is that this whole story takes place 4 years after the exile, but 7 years before the destruction of the temple. And he's saying to the Israelites that your behavior is dictating to God that you should go into exile and that you should do whatever you can to do repentance to avoid any of this happening. Unfortunately, his warning of the Jewish people did not convince these people to stop doing what they were doing, and the destruction took place and the people were exiled for the 70 years, as we know, but thank God, through Ezekiel's seeing the future, he was able to reassure us that we will return to the land of Israel and live there in peace. So that's briefly the story for the Sephardim. The Ashkenazim are taken from the book of Amos, or Amos, and just a little bit about the name is it means burden or bearer of burden, and he was born in the town of Tekoa, and that was south of Jerusalem, but he would go up north for his prophecies to speak about what's going on in the land of Israel, and he was part of the Trei Asar. He did not have his own book, but in Aramaic, Trei Asar is the 12. Some people translate it as the minor prophets. I say there's nothing minor about the guy. He was just able to get his message across very succinctly. And here too, there's a thematic connection. You can't do that. Okay. The Ashkenazi have a different Haftarah. The Haftarah comes from the book of Amos, or Amos, translated the bearer of burden. He too lives in the time before the destruction of the first temple, and he is a southerner, born in the city of Tekoa. If you look on the map, it's southeast of Jerusalem. And years later, it was the city that they would manufacture the oil for the menorah, that the Maccabeim had to send someone to go bring them more oil. Yes, that's the city of Tekoa. And he would have his prophecies up north. He would try to explain to the people in the 10 northern tribes that their behavior is unacceptable to God, and that their behavior is leading to this inevitable exile. And he's trying to prevent that from happening. The Haftarah opens up with a very interesting pasuk that says, Harei kivnei kushim atem, that you are like kushim, or dark-colored skin, to God. Now, at first, you may hear that in a way and be taken aback by what you're saying, but actually it's a huge compliment. It seems in those days the Cushim of Moses' wife was from Cush, the land of Cush, that they were beautifully colored, bronze-skinned people. And God is explaining, it is said that to the Jewish people to God are like the Bnei Cushim, these sons that have dark-colored skin. That even though you're going to go into exile, I'm going to be able to pick you out from the crowd, and I can identify each and every one of you. So when the time comes to get back and be ingathered into the land of Israel, you'll never be lost. You are my children. I can always see you. Even if you're assimilated and diffused, I'll be able to see who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. The next part of the Haftara talks about that the Jewish people will be returned to the land of Israel, and the Davidic dynasty, that David HaMelech was the king of Israel, and it was explained to us that the Mashiach is going to come from David HaMelech, and we're being reassured by the Navi that the Mashiach is going to come. However, there's always a price to pay. It seems that it wasn't enough just to be an Israelite, but there's going to be a cleansing, that you are a sinner, that you're not going to make it. It is being told to us by the prophet. He says the Holy One, the good people, they're going to make it when the land is repopulated. But there's going to be this terrible loss of, according to some of the prophets, half of the nation to death in this war that is going to happen in the time that the Mashiach is coming. So that war is known as Armageddon. It comes from the city's name of Megiddo. And that is where it is believed that this war, to end all wars between the world's two great superpowers, are going to take place. And then the prophet reminds us that once we do repopulate the land of Israel, that it's going to give off these wonderful fruits and produce and everything. And we could see just around us what has happened in the land of Israel with the Jaffa oranges and the produce from the dairy products and other things. That this is an incredible land, an incredible country that has been blessed by God, and that we are eagerly awaiting that the words of the prophet will come true, and that the people that were in exile have now, virtually every country in the world does not hold a Jew back from leaving. This was not true for thousands of years. And that we hope that the Messianic process has begun, appears it has, and that eventually that all these wars that are going on will stop, and everyone will be able to live in peace, and that we could all enjoy living happy together, close to God, in our homeland. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy the Haftara this week.